Hey guys, Brian here, and in today's video I wanted to go over what goes into optimizing a page or a blog post. It's something that I've referenced in a lot of other videos, and I've been meaning to do kind of a hands-on post walking people through that a bit. One thing I think I will do in a future video is actually walk through writing one together on the video and explain what I'm doing as I do it. But in lieu of that today, I wanted to go through kind of a document I've written up here of some general guidelines, and then I've got a couple examples to show as I go that I think will illustrate that pretty well. Now, this is a guide for both whether you're doing a page on a site or if you're writing blog posts to support those kind of pages for services or whatever else you're trying to rank for on the web. So, first of all, we need to have a clear topic. This one sounds obvious, but when you're trying to rank for something in particular, what you don't want to do is have a post that says, my 7 favorite things, because that's going to end up being photography and shoes. Google's not going to know what this page is about because you're talking about so many things, and when it's not clear, you're not considered for that kind of search, is generally how it goes. And so, if one of the things that you're into is photography, then I would recommend just writing a post about that, and beyond just photography in this example, pick some subset of photography, some specific topic related to that you can delve into. And that takes us right into number 2, which is research that topic for keyword trends and traffic estimates. Sometimes we think writing about something is going to be a good idea, and it's not to say that you should only write about things that are heavily searched so that you're pandering for traffic, because ultimately on a YouTube channel or a blog or whatever, you should definitely talk about things that you're interested in as well, or else it's not going to be any fun to do. But related to photography, there might be certain searches related to that barely get any traffic, and one that's kind of similar to something you were thinking about but not necessarily what you were going to pick, that might have 3 times the search volume. And so doing some keyword research, which I talk about on the blog and elsewhere, I'll provide links to and would be happy to go into more detail in another video. But that kind of research will guide you on the types of keywords that you should be focusing on, spending your time on, just to make everything else that you're doing more efficient. And once you have some of those nailed down, we can go into the title. I always like to begin here, both because the title is one of the biggest places that search engines will look to answer the question, what is this page about? One of the heaviest ranking signals. But also I find from the writing and creation standpoint, if you can nail down what your title is going to be about before you start writing, etc., it will kind of guide the content to the rest of the page. If it's more than just saying, I know I want to do a post about photography, and then I just start writing willy-nilly, and who knows where this post is going. Whereas if I start with a title like the 7 things that you need to know about buying a lens. Well, now I know going into it, I need to generate a list of 7 ideas, and it's focused in this case, no pun intended, on lenses for the camera. That's going to be important both for search, so that I can work the keywords that I had just done the research into that post, but also keep me focused while I'm writing it so I don't go tangential, because that will lose attention. Another good thing that will go into writing a title that's less specifically about SEO and more about writing, although in my opinion the two are intertwined. Look at this title as an example. You can see that Mark Manson, who is a great writer, if you don't read his blog, I would definitely recommend it for lifestyle and improvement and things like that. But in this example, why being an asshole can be a valuable life skill. That's probably a topic you've not heard before, and you're probably interested to see what the heck he's going to talk about after that to make that point. This is not so much an example of excellent keyword optimization, but definitely an example of a clever title that's going to attract attention. You want to see what he's going to do. And that takes us into the next point that I have here, the opener. Be direct and get to the point. Make it clear what the reader is going to gain by reading the rest of the page, especially if we're talking about a blog post. Avoid fluff and generalizations. You don't want to say things like, we live in a world today where digital stuff is increasingly important and blah, 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 and I'll eventually get to the point of what I'm talking about with digital. No one will read that. People are used to skipping right through that, and if they've already skipped your first paragraph to read your article, you're already training them in a subtle way to pay less attention to everything else that you're saying. You want them to read it. You want them to be interested, especially with people saying that these days attention spans are lower than that of a goldfish, and if there's any truth to that, then you have seconds when they land on this article to persuade them this is going to be interesting and it's going to be valuable. Keep going. You're going to lose that if you have a boring or unclear opener. Look again at this same article from Mark Manson. We scroll down. His first paragraph. 80 years ago, researchers began one of the longest and most complicated projects to understand human behavior in history. It would take almost 50 years to complete, but their work would define an entire field of psychology. No fluff, straight to the point. You know what this is going to be about, and it leaves a little mystery at the end of that so that you're saying, wow, whatever they did is going to redefine an entire field of psychology. Let's keep reading. That's perfect. And I'm going to click over to his front page, same idea. As far as going to someone's website goes and trying to introduce them immediately to what they're going to do, he tells you, he's Mark, New York Times best-selling author. He gives the name of his book, talks about what he blogs about, gives advice. Some people say I'm an idiot. Other people say I've saved their life. Little self-deprecating humor, little honesty. You decide for yourself. I think that's a fun way to start the page. It gives you a little idea of who he is since this site is about him, and then you can go from there to keep reading about him. It's a great page opener. This is a great blog post opener. Good example of what I'm talking about to keep people interested right off the bat. After that, when the content is long enough or in depth enough to warrant using subheadings like H2s, use them and incorporate that keyword topic into them wherever it makes sense to reinforce it. Subheadings are like the titles, but to a lesser degree in terms of how heavily search engines will look at them as a cue to what the page is about. And so if you're either not using subheadings to visually break up the content, which is good outside of the SEO portion of it, it's a missed opportunity. And if you're using vague subheadings that are not focused on your topics, another missed opportunity. Now, that's not to say to keep using the same words over and over again or to blatantly just stuff keywords in there where it's obvious that that's what you're doing. And you don't have to optimize every subheading if your post is long enough to have several. But I'm going to click over to Neil Patel's site, well-known SEO guy. I'm going to look at the title and some of the other things he does on this page more in a minute. But as you can see, he generally writes really long posts. And he's got his first H2 right here, user signal number 1, bounce rate, because this post is about what do sites that have never been penalized by Google look like. He wants to rank, obviously, for things related to user signals, and so you can tell that the whole post, user signal number 2, user signal number 3. That's a good way to keep using those words meaningfully in subheadings to reinforce it, but then to also reinforce things related to this broad topic, mobile friendliness, bounce rate, etc., average load time. These are all things that are related searches as well that people might be looking for, especially as it pertains to rankings. And so not just does it make sense for the reader for him to use these kinds of H2s throughout the site, and it looks good to break the content up visually with how long this post would be. If it was just a wall of text, it would be overwhelming. But also, this is a great way for him to work in associated keywords contextually into a major ranking signal. After that, we want to use graphics also to visually break up the material. That's especially true if your posts are anywhere near as long as Neil Patel's, although most people don't write 2,500 word or more blog posts, but definitely use at least one. If it's a featured image that your theme on WordPress or whatever platform you use puts at the top, that's fine. If you want to use it halfway through the post or after a major point or to separate two major points, that's good as well. And although it's not nearly as much of a ranking signal as it was years ago, I still always recommend people to remember to put alt tags that are related contextually to what the image is about and presumably what the page is about. That is a place Google will look as well. And as a screen cap here, if you're in WordPress and you're on an image, the alt text you can see is right there. And anything you type in there is something that search engines are going to read to describe that image. And if you do have keywords in there, again, put in well without tactfully or tactlessly stuffing, it can help you. It's a missed opportunity not to do it. Not a huge missed opportunity, but since it's simple to do, don't leave it out. Next, internal linking, using that strategically. When you're touching on points that you've discussed somewhere else in the site, linking to those pages from the page or blog that you're currently writing about is good for a couple of reasons. One, Say, for instance, in my business, if you've already linked to SEO services in a blog, and say on that blog post where I talked about SEO services, I chose the words SEO services as the anchor text and linked from there to my main services page for that. That's useful, but don't keep using the same anchor text over and over again every time. So if I had already used the words SEO services in another post where I talk about something like that and want to link to that page, I might say the best part about hiring someone for your SEO and have that sentence be the anchor text also linking to that page. Doing that over time does a couple things. It reinforces to search engines that you're talking about this topic a lot and how the pages that talk about that similar thing relate to each other. But also, when different pages on the site all continuously link to one page, in this case, say maybe my SEO services page, it's a cue to search engines over the time, not just that we talk about this topic a lot, so maybe you want to rank the site a little better for that search, but that when the site ranks for that search, this page that all the other ones are linking to is kind of the de facto authority on that topic. And so you're telling search engines, pick this page more than the others. Now, sometimes you will get in a scenario where the independent blog post will have enough clout that they'll rank also on Google, and that's a great situation when you can rank 3, 4, or more times on the front page. But if you're going to only rank for one and you want to control which one of them that is, this is a good way to do that. Also, the other advantage of internal linking is it's a good way to retain attention. Sometimes people will finish reading your blog post, they won't really know what to do next, you've answered their questions, they got what they came for, and they'll leave. But if there was memorable anchor text somewhere in it, and they think to themselves while they're reading, I'm not going to click this yet because I want to finish reading this, but I'm going to come back to this. If it's memorable enough, when they hit the end, they'll be like, oh yeah, I got to go back and find that link. They can read it. If you don't want to rely on them having to remember to do it as much, it's also why a lot of people will put at the end of a blog post further reading, or you might like this also, colon, and then a little bullet list of 2 or 3 related posts or pages on your site that are similar to that. Great way at the end to keep people on your site, keep them reading your stuff without leaving. Lastly, have a clear call to action that you want the reader to take. What is it that you're hoping they're going to do after they read this piece of content? Should they share that content on social media? Should they subscribe to your newsletter? Call you? Don't overwhelm them with too many things that you're trying to get them to do, but on the other hand, don't miss an opportunity by not asking. I'm going to go back to Neil Patel's site because he does this really interestingly. You can see that at the top of the page, he's got his title here and goes straight down into the post. But up on the sidebar, he's talking about one of his webinars, not obtrusively in a way that distracts you from what he's actually talking about on this page, but it is also clear. By the time you finish this article, if you were to scroll back up and you were interested in what else he has to say, the fact that he's calling your attention to the fact that he has a webinar on this is right there where you can sign up for it. He also has that at the very top of the site here, again, unobtrusively, but it's obvious. He really wants you to do that. He talks about himself on the side. On the side here, he's got links to more of his content that you can browse if you finished his post and really like it, as well as tools. And then you notice throughout his content, he takes lots of opportunities because he's got a massive amount of blog posts to link internally to other places that he's talked about those similar things. Google likes to see that you've talked about topics a lot and that these posts all interlink to each other in different ways and pass link juice and authority back and forth between them. It's just a good tactic and a great way, especially if you have an older post that's still relevant but hasn't been referenced in a while. Referencing it in this post that you're writing that might get a lot of attention is a great way to put attention on a post that may not rank that well on its own but definitely deserves the read. And then if we scroll all the way to the end, notice how many images, by the way, that he uses throughout his post. He gives tons of examples with visuals, really breaks up the content, which again, when you're writing an essay length piece like most of his are, that's a really important thing to keep people engaged. He gives a conclusion at the end, which is sort of the major takeaway. He often ends with a question, in this case, so how do your metrics stack up to the benchmarks above? Because he likes discussion at the bottom in the context, and he likes to stimulate that. And then right under that, his main call to action is to share on social media. There's nothing else going on right there that's distracting you from that. He's not telling you to call them or do all this other stuff. Those calls to action were up there, which at this point is subtly over here, but as the eye is flowing down, it's not fighting for attention with more things. These are the main things he wants you to do. Comment to the blog, share on social. Hope that was helpful for you guys as a general guide. As many things in SEO go, understanding some of the basics can go a long way. If you haven't been doing these things, just nailing this down well and being consistent as you keep putting up content will help you gain momentum and authority in your content. And again, in the beginning, that research is really going to help guide that. And like I said, maybe in a future video, I'll actually walk through writing a post with you, so I'm explaining the process and you can see it happening instead of just referencing examples of what someone else has done. But anyway, I hope that was helpful, and if it is, please like this video and share it with somebody else that you think might benefit from it, and I will see you in the next video.